Great shirt, by the way.
How are you, Melissa?
Hi, I'm doing
We are live.
okay.
Hey, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. Today we have a victim by the name of Mike Griffin. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Hi, going good. Thank you. It's good to be on here again.
That's good.
Good to see everybody.
Hey, Ben and I tweaked some things today. When I talk, Ben, can you see me on the main screen?
Yeah, everything seems fine.
All right, good. I can't see myself, which is a good thing. Except for the hair. The hair is, Patrick Swayze type thing.
It works fine as long as you pretend you want it to be like that.
Yeah.
Isabel cut my hair yesterday.
Yeah, that ain't happening. No way. Well, today is May the 3rd, 2020. I think, Griffin, is this right? Is it Cat Pulver's birthday?
Yes. I don't know if it might have been. I think it was yesterday, but who knows with the dateline and so on. I mean, I think it was yesterday.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, she's actually going to join us in a bit too, and talk about Joe.
Yay.
Cool.
But first, I guess we have no choice but to talk with you. Just kidding. Mike Griffin is a very talented guy, talented writer. Here is his latest book, and it's called Armageddon House. I almost said Apocalypse House. Armageddon House, and it's a novella published by Undertow Publications. And yes, I love novellas. I love novels too, but I really novellas have a place out there, and I think they're getting more and more popular. So I love encountering novellas. So why don't we do some quick intros, and then we'll talk to Mike Griffin. Did you guys miss us? Man, it's been like not quite a month since we had a show. I had a couple of Sundays where my illness kicked in, and then last Sunday, Griffin and I were fine to do the show, and at the last minute, I just couldn't do it because of our friend Joe. So anyway, and I've said about that for now. We'll come back to that. Ben, you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Ben Handelman. I'm only here because I was such a massive Joe Pulver fan, so he is deeply missed on my end.
That is true, although you did say you were a fan of mine too, right?
That's not a requirement.
He's
Okay.
tech support as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Speaking of being tech support, Mike, I posted instructions in the chat for you to fix your video. So people that aren't aware, there was recently some updates, and so some of Mike's settings got changed.
What, do I
And
click
so-
on this link?
Not the link. No, you don't need that.
See the
Click
button, fix hair. Click that button.
click where it says next to where it says video. There's a little arrow, and choose video settings. Scroll down.
Don't click on the hentai link.
Yeah, don't click anything that John Langan sends you. Just
I
as
have
a warning.
no idea what you're talking about. Where?
Okay, on the bottom left of your screen where it says stop video,
Oh, yeah, I see it.
click the arrow next to that and choose video settings.
Yes.
And you're going to scroll down, and where it says spotlight my video when I speak, you want that checked.
Spotlight my video when I speak. Boy, the audience has got to be just loving this. Touch up
Well-
my appearance. There's a good one.
Yeah, you definitely need that one. But
Okay.
fortunately,
You look like a
Zoom
Korean
can't-
pop star.
All right.
exactly. Yeah,
Is that
Big
better?
airbrush
Thing-
now.
Is it working
I was saying
now?
he should be
Yeah,
wearing
it's
a
working
leisure
now.
suit, but
All right. I'll cut that out of the audio edition. Or
Anyway,
maybe not. Maybe not. Here you have a behind the scenes look at Lovecraft eZine. All right. Bridget, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bridget Brynmark. I'm a big horror fan, and I write music and do art things.
Okay. John Langan? 3 words or less. No, I'm kidding.
Not Laird Barron.
That's it. Yeah.
What the hell?
Very true.
He's the poor man's
Mike,
nightmare.
you told me Laird was going to be here.
It's always.
No, he found
How's
out
this?
Langan, he found out Langan was going to be here and opted out. So Did I get rid of it? Matt Carpenter.
Hi. The prize today is a copy of the hardback comic book comic book biography of H.P. Lovecraft called Some Notes on a Non-Entity. Illustration of Jason Eckhart and Sam Gafford did the text. This is our prize. It's very nice. If you want it, send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put non-entity in the subject heading. Someone will win it in a few weeks.
And showing your age there, it's not a comic book, it's a graphic novel. So.
But we call it a graphic novel if we don't want to have the stigma of liking comic books. It's kind of like my car is pre-owned, it's not used.
All right. Well, I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine. Not sure
What about Melissa?
You missed me and Melissa.
Oh,
yeah.
did I miss both of you? Sorry, I'm still getting used to Zoom. You have to scroll over. Yeah, Melissa.
Okay, I'm Melissa, just a horror weird fiction fan. I have a website where I review weird fiction and horror books.
Your volume's a little low, just FYI.
Oh, okay, I'll turn it up.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good right there.
Better.
Rick, did I get you?
No, Rick Lay, a writer and pulp collector who deeply misses his fellow Marvel Comics book fan, Phil Pulver.
Yep, we do. This is hard to do, but I know Joe would want us to keep doing it. So we'll touch on Joe again in a little bit. Mike Griffin, so you have a new book out. You've written several books. How many books have you written, including Armageddon House?
Well, so it depends, I guess, on a couple of them that were limited and are gone and not able to purchase now. Those are books, but you can't go and buy them. So the first one was Far From Streets, which is a novella. It was a really limited edition from Dunham's Manor Press, and long gone. But that novella is in my first collection. And also did another novella, An Ideal Retreat from Dim Shores. So another one that's out of print and gone, but was reprinted in my second collection. And so then we had my first collection, The Lure of Devouring Light, and my first novel, which was Hieroglyphs of Blood and Bone, and my second collection, The Human Alchemy, and then this one, which is technically not out yet. It comes out the 12th of May.
Okay. Yeah, and if you can, your volume could go up just a bit too. So.
Okay.
I have some great questions lined up. Things like what's your writing process? Where do you get your ideas? Really, really original questions like that. Why don't we do this? Because seriously, I have a list of questions for you. But why don't we start with John, and then I'll go in after that. So, but before we do, I'm sorry. Before we do, John, Mike, can you give us a spoiler-free synopsis of Armageddon House?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult one to summarize simply because it's kind of weird. So the setting is 4 people are in a bunker of some kind. It's a very large, like a government facility type of bunker, seems to be, meant for hundreds of people, and they're the only 4 people there, and they've been there a long time, but they don't remember how long. They don't really agree on how long or why they're there. They argue about it all the time. And they have kind of a routine that they go throughout the day that seems to have been set forth as like rules to follow, and they go about this, but they bicker about it and fight against it and fight against each other, trying to come to some agreement as to why they're there, how long they'll be there, when they might get to leave, and what their relationship with each other is. They seem to have a lot of confusion about basic facts of their existence, like we all do.
Yeah.
So that would be the quick summary of it.
Pete Rollick has just joined us. Hey, Pete. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Pete.
All right. With that said, why don't we start with John Langan?
Oh, now? Okay,
Yes,
fine.
now.
So, Mike Griffin, if that is your real name, is it true that you were the illegitimate son of Merv Griffin?
Comes up a lot. When I was really young and Merv Griffin was still on TV, we were the only two Griffins that most people knew, so they assumed that there was a relation, but no.
Answer the question, Griffin.
No.
Answer the question.
No, there's no proof.
No proof. Even in this age of DNA?
You know how people say maybe Ronan Farrow is actually Frank Sinatra's kid, but there's no proof?
There's totally proof. Look at him. Look at him.
Well, have you seen Merv Griffin?
He does not. Yeah, there you go. You have his same easy charm and boyish good looks.
And his sideburns.
And his sideburns. That's right. Thank you. That's my investigative assistant, Pete Rawlick. Pete Mad Dog Rawlick. We've had him scouring the internet trying to find the true gen on Mike Griffin.
In between grilling today, apparently.
I was smoking, not grilling.
I'm sorry.
There's a subtle difference.
I'm sorry, Pete.
All right. So this book, Armageddon House.
Yeah.
Is it in fact inspired by the Def Leppard song Armageddon?
There's a lot of Def Leppard lyrics sprinkled through if you read it.
I thought so. I thought I recognized a few.
Like when the guy says, "Pour some sugar on me."
Exactly.
That's straight from
Exactly.
Def Leppard. Yeah.
Hit me like a gong, baby. Come on, get it on. I thought it's right there. It's right there. And those words are scattered across 24 pages. But still, I thought to myself, it's right there.
Yep.
Oh, dear. All right. So, in all seriousness, how did it start? What's the genesis of Armageddon House?
Gosh, it's one of those where it's transformed so much over the years. I kind of worked on it and set it aside and worked on it and set it aside many times. So it's probably was so different from when it started from what it is now that I kind of don't remember all the steps in between. But the setting was the original idea of people way underground in a huge facility with different levels, and where each level is kind of its own world, completely different setting. Even though they're all in the same place, each level has a different function and serves like going to a different place up and down the levels. Originally, it was much more of a science fiction thing and much more about a murder. There was no murder in it. Well, not exactly. And like I said, it transformed a lot over the years. So
Okay.
a lot of my stories do that. They start out one thing and I take a lot out and put a lot in, and it keeps changing, and it ends up being a completely different place than when it started.
Right, and then the Def Leppard comes in. Yeah, I mean, reading it, I was kind of reminded on the one hand of something like Laird's 30, where you have these people, who are sort of isolated. Granted, they have access to the outdoors. Your quartet doesn't, but at the same time, there's this kind of claustrophobic feeling, like things are breaking down, and there's the suggestion, isn't there, that there may be that the relationships among the four of them may be, even they may not understand what the full relationships are.
Right. They seem to be making and breaking their own rules as they go along, and not in agreement about what those may be. And it sort of becomes, it's very much their own world, and their memory of the outside world is pretty distant at that point.
Right. And speaking of Laird, it seemed to me that in the shape of the dorm level, that there was a sort of a barren illusion in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if I thought of it that way, but everything comes back to Laird, as you know.
Yeah.
Well, God knows. Yeah. He's fine, by the way, everybody.
Batman. If I can interject just really fast on what you said, John, then I'll cede the floor back to you. You said the setting reminded you a bit of Laird's 30. When I invited Mike to be on the show, I told him that it reminded me of a young adult, really great young adult science fiction author that I read when I was a kid called, his name was William Sleater. And he wrote a book called House of Stairs, where these teenagers are trapped in this type of place and they have no idea why they're there either. So, yeah. So.
The other thing I noticed too was in some ways it felt a little bit like a lot of Brian Evanson stuff. He's got that weird, they're all weird stories, but Baby Arm. And then more recently, he did a novella. I think it was for Tor.com. It was a kind of a science fiction novel about people being trapped inside a structure and who knows what's going on and blah, 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 blah.
I think I might have just read that, so maybe I just ripped him off.
Well,
it was going a whole different direction. It was all Def Leppard, and then I read that.
Right, and then you were like, "No, here we go. It's Eno." All right,
It's not ripping it off, Mike. It's making it yours.
It's a tribute, man. This is a tribute.
I would say I definitely did have some Brian Evanson in my. I think I was thinking, sort of channeling Brian Evanson and David Lynch when I was working this into final form.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, that kind of led me to a question. You know, like you said, right? You know, it's clear from reading your older stuff that like Laird is in the background among other writers, but it did seem that this more recent thing, yeah, like maybe there's still some Laird there, but it felt like you were drawing on other influences and other sources. So I guess, you know, I'll steal Mike's question from him and say, okay, so like, you know, who do you see as important to yourself, you know, developing as a writer, and has that changed? Are there writers that you find like, you know, like Evanson maybe that you're drawing on now?
I feel like I kind of skip from person to person. Sometimes try to set my influences aside and just do my own thing for a while. But something that I'm working a lot on now is trying to write a little more straightforwardly, be a little less confusing and obscure and oblique.
Well, it's about damn time.
I was going to say, and so Armageddon House was sort of the last gasp of the.
It's so funny because the last Mike we interviewed said exactly the opposite. He wants to confuse the hell out of everybody.
I still like to confuse people, but I think on this one I sort of let myself really let it rip. With a lot of the story is just about confusion and mystery, not, you know, for the reader and for all the characters too. And maybe because I was consciously thinking, you know, starting to work on some stuff that's more plot driven and more clear what's going on in the story.
There seemed to me too that there was a certain amount of I'm trying to be oblique about, because I don't want to spoil this, but there was a certain amount of mythology that sort of unexpectedly popped into a little more. I want to say it's about maybe like 60% of the way through. Suddenly, like that changes everything because you think, at least, you know, I thought, oh, okay, so kind of like Evanson or even Beckett, you know, this sort of absurdist kind of situation, these people trapped in this world they don't understand, this place they don't understand, and then suddenly, boom, you're like, wait, this may be completely different. You confused me, Griffin. Damn you.
Well, that can be good or not good. There's definitely some Norse mythology stuff mixed through it. It's not a story that is like an allegory of anything like that. It's sort of I don't want to explain it too much or try to pretend that it can be explained too much. Some of the stuff is just there for the sake of confusion and for the sake of mystery and kind of an echo behind the story, right? Of other things, but you know, the story is about in a lot of ways a sort of time being cyclical and life being cyclical. And, you know, Armageddon myths and things like that often are about time being a loop. The universe is created and it evolves and it exists, and then it's destroyed. And in the destruction, it's created again and starts over. Right. So there's an element of that, I guess.
And yet it seemed to me there was also a hint. There were some cylinders you mentioned, if I can, sort of large cylinders you mentioned. And it seemed to me that there was maybe a hint that there could be another sort of science fictional explanation for this. I'm trying to be sort of oblique because I don't want to spoil this for anybody, but I think one of the things I did love was, you could call it confusion or a sort of multiplicity of readings that are possible interpretations that are constantly kind of like intersecting the story. So at first you're thinking, oh, all right, absurdist situation. Then you're like, wait, could this be? There's like this science fictional thing, and oh, wait a minute, maybe there's this kind of mythic thing. And one of the things I really liked about the novella was the way that it refuses to settle on any of those things, and yet it's confusing, but it's not fuzzy. I guess there's a certain sort of hard-edged clarity to what you're seeing, even if you're like, wait, what's going on?
If after reading it, you have to think about it and discuss it this much, that is a wonderful thing, you know? So anyway, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
It's a wonderful thing as long as the mystery leaves a satisfying feeling for the reader.
Yeah.
Even a mystery can definitely leave a satisfying experience without having everything very, very clearly described as it was definitely this was the answer and this is where it ended up. It can remain sort of nebulous but if it's done right, it can still be satisfying emotionally to the reader, and they can feel like they got somewhere with a payoff.
So this is something, one of the things that interested me when even before I finished it, because I thought, man, this is a kind of situation that it seems clearly kind of fascinates you. You've had other narratives where you have like a structure that is in some way separate from the rest of the world, or out of sync with the rest of the world, and sometimes we get outside the structure, and we see that, man, the world has really changed a lot in the time that we've been in here. In other cases, we're not sure how much the world has changed, but it seems to me that it's there in Far From Streets, and it's there in hieroglyphs of Blood and Bone, and probably some of the other stories in your collections that I'm not thinking of right now. So, so what about that, man?
Well, there's definitely, I don't know if you would agree, John, there's a thing that I feel like as you write more and people explain your work to you more, you sort of start to see things that you've been doing all along and weren't intentionally trying to necessarily focus on. They just recurred and they came up again and again. And you realize, oh yeah, a lot of my stories are about going to a different place. A person has just left home, or a person has ended up in a new place. And a lot of the story is about exploring this new place that they've gone. It's something that I've written a bunch of these before, really, realizing, people like what you just said and other reviews pointing out this common focus or theme, in my stories. And it's there, obviously, we come back to things over and over again if they fascinate us, or if there's something in them that we feel, evokes, resonances and makes for a cool story, an interesting world. But if you ask me, like, why so many of these stories do people end up in a weird, trippy house and it's about freaky architecture? I don't know the exact reason.
A lot of drugs is my guess.
Well, my guess would be too many viewings of Big Brother. So,
Big Brother, or last year at Marienbad.
That's a favorite for me.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Because I could totally see that. There's definitely that weird kind of thing. I mean, not weird in a pejorative sense, but in a descriptive sense. The sort of weird location. But one of the other things that's here again is you have one character who's like this really obnoxious male character. And in Hieroglyphs of Blood and Bone, you had the housemate on the houseboat who's just, they're both these examples of kind of aggressive and really even like sort of toxic masculinity. So what's up with that, Griffin?
It's not a loaded question.
I know some toxic people, John. That's one thing. Honestly, I think it's hard not to go into the world, and a lot of us interact on social media because we don't live in the same place. And it's hard not to go into an arena like that and see a lot of people behaving in a way that's just shockingly selfish and aggressive and terrible. And that's not to say the story is meant to be a commentary on social media, but maybe that's just where it comes from, seeing how people interact with each other. And so much of sometimes people's daily interaction is just sort of fights and meanness and name calling and trolling and being shitty,
Right. All right. I want to turn this in an unexpected direction. So you're an ambient musician, or at least you have been an ambient musician.
Yeah.
What connection do you draw between that and your writing?
Well, yeah, I've been asked that question a few times, so it's not a very original question, John. But
wow. Okay, this interview is over, Merv Griffin.
Oh my God.
No, it's something I've thought about, definitely. I mean, they're very different art forms, I guess you'd say. Similar in some ways. There are definitely ways that I approach putting together ambient music with layering and with going back through something and adding layers to it and adding layers and creating this kind of new surface that wasn't there on the first level. That's similar to how I a lot of times write stories. A lot of times I write a story and the first draft is just very simple explanation of people walking around and saying things, but there's not a lot of feeling to it and not a lot of texture and not a lot of description. It's almost like an outline or a synopsis of the story. And I go through it and go through it and go through it, and it kind of builds up. the texture that's more like what you finally see. So in that sense, I guess I approach them the same way. In ambient music, though, a lot of the kind of music that I usually make, it tends to be very restrained and very low key and kind of sedate. And I think that my writing, I'm not aiming for that. You might say that somebody might say
it does put me to sleep. Yeah,
you might find it restful. I don't know, but I'm aiming for maybe a more intense, a more visceral experience with the writing. So in that sense, they're different.
Just as an aside, if those watching or listening to this wants to listen to some Mike Griffin music, can they purchase it online? How's that work?
Well, let's see. I guess the easiest and most direct way is just, the ambient music that we're talking about. For those of you that aren't aware of it, I started in the 90s. I started an ambient music record label called Hypnos Recordings. So the website is at hypnos.com, hypnos.com. And in the 90s and through the early 2000s, it was really thriving and growing quickly and putting out a lot of CDs. And this was back when people were buying a lot of CDs. It was before the era of downloads and Napster and all that stuff. And did it in addition to my day job, but it kept me very, very busy for a while. And so we're still doing it, but it has sort of tapered off as people don't buy music as much. And as I got distracted by writing and spent more of my focus on that, less time working on music. Although I have been working on music again lately, which is why you see synthesizers propped up against the wall there. So if you wanted to look at, check out some of the music, here's some samples, that kind of thing, you could just go to hypnos.com and you could find the store, and a lot of the albums have sample clips and that sort of thing.
Just one more question. I'll cede it back to John, but any of it on Spotify?
Maybe, probably not. A lot of the artists don't want, maybe this has changed, but at the time that I was putting out more music, a lot of the artists didn't want their music up on Spotify because Spotify basically doesn't really pay anything for it. So you'll get 50,000 streams and you'll get $1.04 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So at the time that we first started putting stuff up for, distribution that way, a lot of the artists opted out of that.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, there's probably places where you can find it. Some of the artists have sort of, the course of their, CD release agreement with us has sort of expired, and they've put out their music on Bandcamp. So that's a place that you can find a lot of it. As for me, I haven't put out a lot of music in quite a while, just because, like I said, of the focus on writing. And I have kind of gotten back into playing around with synthesizers and ambient music again for fun, and might release some music again at some point. But it's sort of been kind of in hibernation, I guess, for a while.
Okay. Sorry, John, go ahead.
No, not at all. It's it is really interesting to me that because I do see. I hear what you're saying, that what your fiction is aiming for is a more intense kind of experience, and yet it is also very restrained, I think, and very, I want to say kind of stripped down and heading more in that.
You're trying not to say more.
Direction. I had nothing else to do. I stayed awake. I drank a lot of coffee. But so did you? Just to follow up, Merv, did you see yourself like when you were a kid? Did you want to be a writer, or did you want to be a musician, or both? Like I'm kind of curious. Like, how did that? What was that progression?
I would say I definitely earlier. Well, when I was really young, I wanted to be an artist. I was really into comic books and wanted to be a comic book artist, and spent all my time drawing and sketching and trying to learn how to do that. Probably all the way through high school and maybe even the beginning of college. That was what I wanted to do and maybe hoped might happen. And then in college, I started writing. I actually had started writing a little bit when I was younger, maybe emulating Tolkien or something, and Stephen King, playing around. And then in college, became an English major and started writing a little bit in college. Wrote, one novel my last year of college and a couple novels right after college, short kind of, not very effective novels, but still. And so did that got really serious about writing fiction in my, from I guess throughout my 20s. And then in my late 20s started messing around with electronic music, and then really got fully involved in that and stopped the writing pretty completely for a while. And the music thing became so all-encompassing because I was not only making my own music, but I was collaborating with other people, and I was putting out a lot of CDs of other people's music and running this label and this mail order business, which really was like almost another full-time job for a long time. I was before I got married, I was running it all by myself, and working until 1 or 2 in the morning on the record label, and then crash for a few hours and go to my day job. So at some point after getting married, Lena my wife started to sort of encourage me that, because it had come up a few times about the fact that I had sort of let writing drop, but I still cared about it. And she kind of encouraged me to get back to it, try it again. And so I took kind of another run at it, it's kind of reverse thing, set aside the music a bit and focus more on the writing. And, it takes a while to get things going. So you have to write for a while before anybody starts to see it or starts to get published anywhere. But that's kind of where the direction I've been working since, is just kind of trying to primarily focus on the fiction stuff, and it seems like it's going pretty well.
I'll be the judge of that. It's, I'll pass this back over to Mike because
glad you're here, John.
No, the last question that I want to ask really has to do with your relationship with Joe and the way that played into your writing and the development of your writing and your friendship with him. But I also, if Mike has other questions about, sort of leading up to that, I feel it might be better to do those first, and then,
please go ahead. I don't have to lead the show. I'm glad you're here.
Damn it. So
do my work for me.
I knew this sounded too good to be true. I mean, this is in some ways it's a really tough part of the show, right? Is talking about Joe. But on the other hand, I have this very vivid memory of the first Necronomicon Providence in 2013, was it 2011, 2013?
13, I believe,
13, yeah. When Laird, here we come back to Laird again, and Joe were doing a reading together, but they had secretly planned that they were going to cut their reading short and invite you and Scott Nicolay up to read your stuff. And it was this kind of exciting in a way to be in on something like that and to know that was going to happen. And it was this really, I thought this really generous gesture on the part of both of them. I think Laird was the guest of honor maybe for that, or one of the guests of honor for that one. And Joe, was that when Joe got the Robert Bloch Award? That was the next one, 2015.
That was 2017.
Was it 20? Okay. Yeah. But it just struck me as this wonderful thing for them both to have done, sort of symbolically as well as literally. So
yeah.
And certainly were you in? I know you were in the Legati one because that story made a big impression on me. The story in the Grimscribe's Puppets.
Right.
But anyway, what I know that you and Joe were really close over the years. He visited you guys. You showed him the Pacific Ocean. As I understand it, you tried to drown him several times. He was like, we all float down here, and you were like, damn it. What do you like? What effect did he have on you as a writer?
Well, by the time I got to know Joe, I was writing, and I think I had started to be published a little bit. But we kind of got to know each other more about music stuff. I think he saw me talking about the ambient music stuff a little bit. He saw my wife, Lena, making music experiments and songs that she would post on YouTube, and he just thought that was really cool that she could make strange ambient music and she could do covers of pop songs like The Werewolf or whatever. He just thought that was awesome. And so Joe and I got to be friends a lot, talking about music and a little bit talking about his writing and my writing, and then as we just were friends for a while, I think he sort of saw me start to get published more and kind of come into my own a little bit as a writer. And he had read a few of my stories, but he wasn't at that point yet, I'm going to take you under my wing. He was more just in a friendly way encouraging me. And then I remember when he was collecting contributions for a season in Carcosa, which was the anthology he edited right before Grimscribe's Puppets. I wasn't quite there yet, and I think we sort of jokingly talked about that, like, pal, you're not going to get invited to this. Keep working, maybe sometime. And so the next time was not that long after, when he was doing the Griffin Puppets, and he told me, hey, you know, I've got a great cast of people I've invited to contribute to this. You know, and if it works out to where I might have room, maybe you could contribute something, and it's got to be up to snuff. The fact that we're pals doesn't get you in the book. And so I wrote Diamond Dust, which is the story that it, you know, no spoiler, ended up being in the book, but submitted it to him, and he said he really liked it, but he said he had some notes. But for Joe, notes weren't like normal proofreading notes or whatever. They were just like vague ideas and a lot of gesturing and stuff. He was kind of a very intuitive editor, more than a nuts and bolts, you know, by the book editor. So he would call me, and we would do these long Skype talks, and we would talk about all kinds of stuff. And then we would sit and go through my story, and we would read parts of it, and he would just sort of shrug and make noises and kind of make known what he meant, you know? I don't mean to say he was inarticulate. Obviously, the guy is a brilliant poet, but his way of editing was sort of like almost like physical or whatever. It wasn't as much, you know, like a 6th grade writing teacher or something like that. You know, his poetry and his writing were very from the gut, very visceral and very felt. And that's kind of how he edited too. He would just sort of suggest feelings and what something needed more of, almost like a film director. I tried to evoke a certain performance. And so we went through my story, and he gave me a bunch of places where he thought it needed more emotion, it needed more of a reversal here. And I went back through it and rewrote it pretty extensively. And honestly, John, this is true. He told me, I really like this when I revised it. I really like this, but I'm waiting on Langan. Langan is known to always be past deadline, and he's known to always write very long. And so if Langan does one of his deals where he writes a 16,000 word story, I may not be able to take your story because there may not be a room. This is all true. I'm not teasing you. This is true.
I know it's true. Autumn Cthulhu.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, God damn, you know, I like Langan and all, but I wish he would just send in like a little 6,000 word story like the guidelines suggested, and just send it to Joe, and then I could know whether I'm going to be in this book or not. Because at the time, I think by that time I had a couple of stories published, like Apex Magazine and Lovecraft eZine, and a few places that were a little bit more prominent. And so I was standing on my own 2 feet a little bit, but I really wanted to be in this book. So finally, John submits his story. It's long, but it's not too long. It's maybe like substantially past the deadline. So I've spent a lot of time like in pain and anguish worrying about whether I'm going to finish this book. But I finally got to be in the book, and it was, you know, the best good feeling I'd had at that point in the writing endeavor was I didn't know at the time the book was going to be super, super popular and respected and win the Shirley Jackson Award and all that. But, you know, I really feel like even though Joe and I were friends by that time, that my story, he put it through the ringer to a much greater degree than he did anybody else's, because he knew that I was not as proven and we were friends, and he didn't want anybody to be able to say, you put Griffin's story in this because you're pals who like to talk about ambient music, and his story is the weakest one in the book. He wanted it to be, you know, one of the better ones. Not to say that it was one of the better ones, but he wanted to have nobody able to point and say, you put your friend in the book.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I can tell more stories about how Joe encouraged me, but that was how it began, and how we ended up with my story being in the Griffin Puppets, at least.
I just want to say, by the way, that story was under deadline. I just told him, tell Griffin that it's going to be a while.
Just tease Griffin. They can
torment him. The story was actually 4,000 words long, and I was like, you know what? I can add some more to this.
Your story on Autumn Cthulhu was number one, not under deadline. Number 2.
Mike, you know,
this is great.
Mike does so many drugs. I mean, who even knows if he's telling the truth at this point?
Well,
I mean,
you could buy the book. I mean, that's one way.
Are you even sober, Mike?
Right, exactly. Look at him. Look at the man. He's comparing himself to Patrick Swayze. Something's going on.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a valid comparison, really, though. Honestly, yeah. Just as an aside, this is about you. This your show, Griffin. But yeah, John sent me this novella basically for this short story book, and he said, "Yeah, I don't think you'll want it. It's too long." The thing is, though, it was brilliant. It was really, really brilliant, and I could not have it in there, John. So there you go. I'm giving you shit, but I'm also telling you what a great writer you are. So
The importance of being Langan.
You're definitely high now. Yeah, there's no doubt about it, man.
Wait,
I wish I was
so
high.
Can we get you to commit to Autumn Cthulhu 2 right now?
Yeah, but I've had a few detours. There is going to be an Autumn Cthulhu 2. There's no question about it.
The Mike Griffin special.
Yeah.
Tell John the deadline is 6 months earlier than the true deadline.
Yeah. I actually didn't want to accept the Mike Griffin story, but Joe made me do it. So
Probably true.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm curious, Mike. Did you guys because I mean, one of the things we've said about Joe is how much he loved comic books. I mean, especially Marvel comics. I mean, did you guys talk about that at all? That was never something we really talked about a lot. I mean, I passed a couple of remarks with him back and forth. But was that, since you had that in your, because I was the same way. Like when I was a kid, that was all I wanted to be, was a comic book artist.
Right.
And then I went to Catholic high school and they were like, art, who needs art? And I discovered Stephen King at the same time. But so did you guys talk about, what you talked about? He encouraged you, like what was, what was
we talked about comics a little. I think we liked different stuff a little bit. We liked, there was like some of the same things we liked, which is the really cosmic Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby stuff. But he was really into the Captain America, which I never was. A little bit with the movies, but the comics I just never was into it at all. He was really into the Thing and Fantastic Four and the Defenders and a lot of that stuff. And I may have enjoyed it a little bit, but it wasn't really what I was into.
Yeah, I was friends with Joe despite his Marvel tendencies. He was totally wrong. DC was the way to go, but yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about that a little bit, but it really is really more about talking about weird music. That was really what Joe and I talked about 90% of the time. Was the Nex and Brian Eno and all that stuff.
I just remembered Mike many, many times, if not all the time, I'm not sure, when he would write a short story, at the end he would write what he was listening to while he wrote that story.
Yeah. And it was a cool thing, and I know that when we ended up doing that, the Numbers of the Beast, that sort of tribute to Joe that happened, I think in 2016. It was obviously a tribute. He was still around. We did it as sort of a love thing, and John, I think he might have been one of the ones that sort of got that in motion. It was sort of like a Who Killed Jack Haringa, or the one that was about Laird. It was inspired by some of those earlier blog things where everyone would do a kind of a tribute to the same person and post it on the same day. And so a lot of people, I loved seeing that a lot of people in their little tributes to Joe would put, and I did it too, at the bottom what they'd been listening to when they wrote it.
Anything else, Mr. Langan?
That's I just I'll cede the floor. I mean to sort of anyone else who wants to ask any questions about Armageddon House.
Yeah, Matt, just before you begin there, I just want to say hi to Kat Pulver. I sent her an invite and she popped in. I know she'll want to update us about things. So, hey, Kat, glad to see you.
Hello. I've been listening. I've been chuckling and making notes and taking names.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh. I'm just
the
going
naughty
to
list.
You're one of them, Langan. Trust me.
Story of my life, Kat. Story of my life.
Oh, yeah. I'll start to feel sorry in about an hour or so. No, but let's finish with the real star of the show and Merv in that case, and I'll chime back in later. I've got notes.
Matt, you have a question for Merv?
How do I even segue into this? Okay, let's ask about a couple things. Are you, you've got this really kind of unique sort of voice when you write. I was just wondering, just with the so much interest these days in people doing series or mini series or TV shows of their work, have you been approached at all, or is your agent hawking some of your stuff for different media?
I don't have an agent, so at some point, probably with one of these 2 novels that I'm working on finishing, one of those I'll probably use as sort of a food to try to send to agents at some point, but I don't have an agent. Just still writing kind of what I want and aiming for, I guess, what interests me at this point, and not, thinking as commercially as that at this point.
Well,
And
actually,
another is more.
didn't you tell me you keep emailing Netflix over and over, and then they finally blocked your email address? Or
I've seen people over on social media just like constantly, hey, here's a link to my book, as if Netflix has like a department of interns or something that are handing out contracts to people who link their book
right
on Twitter. I don't know.
Right. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is another thing I've always kind of been impressed. I remember when I first met you at an Necronomicon, there were a bunch of people standing around talking, and a certain time came and you said, I have to go work, because you had been like dedicating a certain amount of time for writing each day, I think.
It doesn't sound like
well, it just seemed to me that happened a couple times when I'd seen you at conventions. You had some time set away where you were going to go write or do so, or maybe you're trying to get away from me. It happens.
You know what? I hate to say it. It's not glamorous, and it's not going to make people think I'm a genius or anything. It was probably my day job. I probably had day job stuff I had to go do during the convention. Yeah.
Also, Matt, I think he said I have to go and drink.
That's believable. I need a burrito and 7 beers.
So do you set up a series of, like, when you're trying to write as a second career while you're still paying the bills with another job, how do you work the discipline? Like, for writers out there, how do you get that discipline to actually go and write?
Well, I know the answer to this one.
I don't know. The answer
is Sundays. We're taking him away from his writing.
For me, one of the big things is I block off Sunday completely. So, usually in the morning, block the internet, come in here, shut the door, play music, and try to write for as much of the day until 8 p.m. or so as I can. So if I can get in 10 hours of writing, then that's the majority of what I get done. And then if I'm being on task and kind of focused with my projects, then I'll put in an hour here and a couple hours there, and also pad it out to where maybe I've got 20 hours or so in the week. But when you're working a full-time job, if I'm on a deadline or something, I can stay up until late and push. But you can't live on no sleep long term. So with a full-time job, I used to get up at 4:30 in the morning or something and try to write before work. I just don't. It's just not long term something I can sustain.
Everyone's system is different, and for you, I do like this because no matter what happens, if you don't get one word of writing in during the week, you know that you've gotten a lot of that. You've gotten a lot of writing done on Sunday, so I'm sure It must be a good feeling. So.
Yeah, I do find what I've found over the years is that if I have a week where I don't get any writing done during the whole week, and I come in here on Sunday, that I don't have a great start. I'm sort of starting. I'm at a full stop, and I'm trying to get going again. Whereas if I've worked a few times throughout the week, even if it's just a half hour here and an hour there, I have kind of kept the ball rolling, and the start is easier. I hear a weird sound.
Yeah, I do too. Anyone else have questions for Mike before I jump in a little bit?
Yeah, I have a couple if you don't mind.
Sure, please.
So, Mike, you talked a bit about your ambient music. I'm kind of curious because with this lockdown, there's been a lot of articles about how ambient music has been on the rise because a lot of people are stuck in their houses. And, so for example, I have a Eurorack synthesizer on this side of me, which you can patch together and make generative patches. And so I don't want to call making ambient music easy because it's as difficult as any other music, but it's a little bit more of a sort of process thing, and you kind of play around with it. I know on the computer you have software synthesizers where you can do similar things. So I was kind of curious, has the lockdown sort of increased your appetite to do it? And sort of what are you using other than the SH-101 and Korg Minilog on the floor behind you to make it?
Well, first of all, I actually think ambient music is very easy to make. That's not to say that all ambient music is sort of a low art form. I just think it's very easy entry point to get some sounds, some height, a lot of sustain, add some reverb to it, change the chords a few times, and you've got instant ambient music. The thing is, it's easy to make, but it's like chess. It's not that hard to learn to play it. It's just very, 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 very hard to be any good at it. And I think the same is true with ambient music. So
that's a great analogy.
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Great.
Right. Like it's really easy. I mean, I could bring somebody in here who was not a musician, show them a few things, tell them if you play this, it does this. If you run it through this box, it'll make it, repeat or reverberate. and they could mess around in 3 hours, make an album. Now it wouldn't really be any good. It wouldn't be very interesting, but they could, they could make something that sort of passes at a glance for ambient music. And there's definitely been a lot of people who spend about that much time learning their art and start putting it out, especially now with Bandcamp. And even before that with CDRs, there were just people who really just threw stuff together, didn't put a whole lot of attention into it, not a lot of craft. They were just kind of churning it out. And I'm sort of like, having not really made ambient music in a while, sort of just enjoying letting myself do that, play around, and not have any end result in mind. I'm not necessarily planning on putting out a CD of what I'm doing, although I might.
Kind of soothing, maybe. Relaxing.
What's that?
Kind of soothing, relaxing.
Yeah, I'm treating it like play. I'm treating it like fun and relaxation, and not something where I'm driving myself. Like sometimes, you're driving yourself with your writing, and the writing is almost like work at times. You have to discipline yourself to come and shut the door when you might rather go do something else or play a video game or whatever. But I'm letting myself treat the music as a fun exploration. But because I have experience with it, I'm not really starting like a beginner.
Yeah.
But what I have tried to do, because I have so much stuff, and I think I've often thought the reason that I stopped making ambient music was because I accumulated so much gear. It was sort of intimidating. All these you can't see them because they're all hidden away in other rooms and closets and stuff, but racks of synthesizers and so much stuff that I think it got in the way of me just having fun with making music. And so I decided to set myself some restrictions where I would use just a couple of monophonic synths, which are the ones that you see back leaning up against the wall there, along with a software that I have running on this computer that I don't think you can see. You can sort of see it. There's a program called VCV that maybe you've heard of, which is a virtual.
It's like a virtual Euro rack, basically.
Right. And so just I kind of got it just like thinking, I have experience with modular stuff. My friend Dave Fulton, we've done a couple albums together, and he's really into modular. But I don't really, although I know the basics of how components of synthesizers go together, because the SH-101 has this neat little, it's got the things broken into a grid. It's like a glued together modular in a way.
Yeah.
But I kind of got VCV because I wanted to sort of learn it. And what I thought of it as was this sort of open source toy that would teach you how to use a modular setup. But in fact, it's actually pretty robust, and you can make really amazing stuff with it. I mean, you could really make it a real instrument and make something really amazing with it.
I played with it quite a bit myself. So in order to justify the purchases, because as you may know, modular synthesizers are really expensive. Each module can be anywhere from $200 to $700, and you need 5 or 6 of them to make something that can actually play music.
Yeah.
But VCV Rack, which is what he's talking about, is kind of a software version where you can, I want 2 oscillators, here's an LFO, here's a filter, here's, a sequencer, and you can just sort of, there's little virtual cables you can connect everything with. And it's easy to set up. It's kind of hard to figure out initially if you don't, so you were already familiar because you had a physical one. Okay, the oscillator goes into the filter, the envelope generator, etc. If you don't know any of that stuff and everything I'm saying is gibberish, it's complicated to get into, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, and especially with VCV Rack online, there's just a lot of people on YouTube or Bandcamp and SoundCloud just putting this stuff out now. So that's why I was kind of curious. It's kind of interesting to see, because for me, I just sort of like plug cables into things and twist knobs just till I see what happens. I'm only just now kind of better understanding the theory behind some of it.
Right.
So I was kind of curious as someone who's put stuff out, what you were doing.
I'm glad Ben asked those questions, because real quick, we'll get off the music here in a second, but I think that ambient classical type music too, the best music evokes some sort of mood, and that's the difference between what you were talking about, that anyone can lay down a few tracks, but does it evoke something? Is it
right?
And so my question for you, Mike, I was a musician a long time ago, past life, and haven't done it for a very long time. I very much enjoy good movie soundtracks that really evoke a mood. Do you consider that more on the classical side or more on the ambient side? And then I'll stop with all the stuff after you answer, because I think might be warning some people, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some soundtracks that are very obviously like classical form music. They generally these days aren't using real classical players a lot. They're trying to use sample libraries because it's just cheaper. So you have something like a Disney soundtrack, and it's got what sounds like an orchestra playing, but it's a guy with a lot of expensive sample libraries that are, you know, recordings of a cello player and recording of a viola player all layered together. And then there's the opposite extreme, which is the kind of the dark ambient and ambient side or electronica side of soundtracks, where it's just a young guy, like a synth player guy. And then you have the in-between area, like Olafur Arnolds and Max Richter and people like that are kind of modern classical artists doing it, you know, with sheet music mindset, but they're also putting in synthesizers and samples and using technology more too. To me, the most interesting ones are the ones that are right there in the middle that I just mentioned.
Okay. Anyone else have questions for Mike Griffin? Just a couple quick questions from me, Matt. John covered things really well. I'm just curious, what draws you, or let me start with this. The first time I met you in 2013 at ARMAGEDDON, you were kind enough to pick me up at the airport. And I had just recently published one of your short stories in Lovecraft eZine. Forgive me, I don't remember the title right now. What I do remember is what a great story it was. And I asked you in the car if you had kids, because I had just met you, and you said no. And it really shocked me because you evoked that parental feeling very, very well without actually having experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and which I think maybe perhaps takes a great deal of empathy. You know, they say that readers are people who read a lot of fiction are more empathic. Whether that's true or not, do you think that the best writers are more empathic?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to be a writer and go pretty far with just writing a kind of a version of yourself in your own life. And so you don't have to necessarily be very empathic. You just have to sort of remember what it felt like when you did this or when you did that, or describe these things. But people who are able to write characters that are different from themselves, or write scenarios that are different from, say, their own past relationships and jobs that they've had, it requires not only imagination, but it requires empathy, and also, you know, having observed throughout the course of life what other people are like. You know, if a man is going to write a woman character, let's say a woman protagonist, you know, you could argue that we all have a little bit of man and a little bit of woman inside of us, maybe from some angle, but also you have to be able to observe different people and have listened to and put yourself in the position of people who are different from yourself. And not only, you know, a man writing a woman or vice versa, but maybe a adult writing a child, or a younger person writing an old person, or, you know, a person that doesn't have children writing from the perspective of a parent that's lost a child, which is the story you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, that's right. What drew you to word fiction?
Well, yeah, I guess what it was is that when I came back to writing again later, like I started off at first writing a lot of science fiction. That's kind of what I was reading, and I was writing science fiction, but it was weird science fiction. It had a lot of weird elements in it, but it was pretty much, you know, it had spaceships and people flying into space and stuff like that. So it was, you know, the kind of stuff that you would try to get published in Asimov's or that kind of thing. But I found that my own reading was drifting. I'm not sure why, but I guess I was sort of discovering certain publishers. I think I bought some books from Nightshade, and I started off with Nightshade reading some of their science fiction stuff, but then I got into Laird Barron, and I got into maybe Joel Lane, and I'm trying to think who else was in this box. I ended up buying, I think Nightshade had some deal where their books were something like 50% off, and I bought like 30 books in some giant box. And I remember reading Laird Barron for the first time, and that's kind of how I think then I found his blog on LiveJournal, and we kind of got to be friends through me commenting on his blog. And then he was really great. I guess I should say, Laird is still with us. Great at recommending other writers. So a lot of the writers that I read now, I know that I first heard about those people, Paul Tremblay, Stephen Graham Jones. I learned of those names through Laird's blog and through recommending those writers. Livia Llewellyn, maybe John even, I'm not sure, probably.
No, but Laird and I hate each other.
So then you sort of I guess follow your nose. As a reader, I think, you can certainly make yourself take reading like medicine, but I'd rather have it be pleasure, and I'd rather be going to try to read what I enjoy. And I think I just found that I was enjoying reading this stuff more than I was enjoying reading the science fiction, which started to seem a little samey after a while and a little too bound by rules. And I loved that a lot of the weird fiction that I was reading, the weird horror, seemed very literary and very crafted at a high level, very smart and very serious. At the same time, it was fun. And so I just through imitation, I guess, just started writing more in that direction. I hear a bug. There's a bug.
Yeah, something like
or
that.
Or a gerbil.
We appear to be having a few problems with the viewers seeing it, so I'm going to not keep this going as long as I normally would. What I'd like to do is hear from Kat. So, how are you, Kat? Still there?
I'm sorry. I'm back. The internet is famously slow around here, and the chat on occasion turns into a Max Headroom show for me. I'm sorry if I'm delayed or anything.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, tell that Griffin, who just literally sounded like Max Headroom for about a minute, you included. Okay, verifications first, I guess, just to make a couple of things plain. Nobody around here started the John Langan is famously late. I believe that actually originated with Alan Tetlow as an internal hint for other editors. Plus, Langan, of course,
but worth the wait.
Yeah, well, that's easy to say. We all know that the reason we're waiting, or that Joe was waiting and you are, is it's not just Langan. We know if we try and pressure him into something, other than giving him a wrong deadline, he's going to turn up with Laird Barron and Paul Tremblay, and we all know what that ends up.
There's a lot of crying and hugging.
Yeah, especially with the pups, right? No.
And in my defense, Kat, every editor that I have ever, they contact me and they say, how's it going? And I would say, you know what? I'm not going to make your deadline. I'm really sorry. And if you want to go without me, that's totally fine. It's on me. You don't have to feel. And then they all say, no, we'll wait. But then they say, he's so late. And I'm like, well, make up your mind. If you don't want it, that's totally fine. Like if you feel that you have to go to press, fantastic. It's like I said, it's my fault for being late. But if I'm saying to you, hey, go on without me, and you're like, no, we'll wait, then yeah, take that, Ellen Datlow.
No, I wasn't going to go on without you. I just enjoy giving you crap about it.
That was because I got Laird to threaten you.
Yeah,
I did actually. I did email Laird, and he said he'd kick you in the pants, get it done. So.
Oh wait, he was living with me at the time, so I was like, yeah, good luck, buddy.
As far as I remember, you've been given the other deadline quite often. Like a month in advance, at least?
Oh, I have no idea when things are actually due. But this is about Mike Griffin and Joe Pulver, not about me.
Yeah.
Now, let me tease you for a sec. You were the guy that called in along with Tom Lynch, the poor blind girl, and had me guess who the hell you were while you guys were talking. So this is just me getting back to you.
When was that? Oh, that's right. We did do that with Tom Lynch. That was all Tom's idea. He's a bad person. He's a really, really bad person.
Yes.
If you know Tom, you know how bad he is.
He's a bad man.
I try really hard. Every time I see him and his family, I try to, when Tom steps out of the room, I try to say to his wife and kids, look, are you okay? Just you can just blink. That's all you need to do. But we can never agree if one blink will mean yes and two blinks will mean no, and it just gets confusing.
I'm sorry, you're quite aware that Chow Yu is going to be able to kick your lead any second.
Your internet from Berlin is not good. All right, you back with us, Kat? No, we can't hear you. We might have to have you call in.
German technology.
Yeah.
German slow internet.
That's a little bit better. My question to you, Kat, is pretty dumb question maybe, but how are you doing?
I'm going to give you the constant answer. I'm doing.
Okay.
It's no fun. We all know that it's really tough. We all know that too, but I'm getting somewhere. By the way, if the next time the thing breaks up, just have someone explain to me how I killed the video and I'll go back to audio instead. That just might help a bit.
You sound good now.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, Germany is down. I work for a cell phone provider, or I have been before I got sick. Trust me, what I'm hearing from my coworkers is the whole network is down to crap because everyone's watching Netflix. I've literally turned everything off around here to keep this thing stable.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Ground floor and crap. And if you start hearing voices, it's not you, it's me. I'm surrounded by gadgets that talk back to me when they're not supposed to. So ignore it.
So you want to do a project like or similar to what was done for Willem, the bench there. And I am gathering that we spread the word about PayPaling that email address.
Yeah.
Did that get where it needs to be?
Are you kidding me? There's two projects that are going on. One is very time delayed. That is the thing in Portland, where we're still having to iron out a couple of things. That is the Carcosa Inc. email with the retainer.
Right.
The other thing, wow. All right, let me try and start that again. The other thing was that I had stupidly posted on Facebook about somehow magically having managed to stop Joe from being buried like a stinky trash can and actually got magically the ability to keep his ashes here. And I had just mentioned that it would be cool if people chimed in and could help just a little bit. I was hoping for like half of it. Within 9 hours, the whole bill was footed.
That was the carcosa.ink@gmail, right?
Yeah, that's at this point for both projects, because what I was trying to get together, maybe kind of a which was real, that bill exploded. That was covered in 9 hours. So the overhead email, the usual one for us, is done and over with. That's more than settled. Everything else that goes into the Portland project, like William's bench or something that he's being remembered at the place he loved, being his own summer camp, all of that goes through PayPal to carcosa.inc@gmail.com.
Okay, so the big question is, do you need more funds there, or are you okay? I think she froze.
Because I don't know.
You there, Kat?
Yeah, can you kill my video so I go down to audio?
Of course. Let's see here.
That's probably more helpful
video,
for
there you
everyone.
go. So
Okay.
I guess my question was the carcosa.ink@gmail.com. Do you have enough funds for that project, or do you need more?
Portland is at this point not settled at all where we're going and how we're doing this. So I don't know what kind of money is going to be needed.
Okay.
Several people are looking at a million possible different things, but everything's closed down and bureaucracy is famously slow. So as soon as I have an idea financially, I'll definitely chime back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I can actually lean back now and pretend to be relaxed, huh, now that the video's off. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
My line is hellish at this point.
Mike Griffin, Armageddon House comes out on May the 12th, is that right?
Yep, May 12th.
Okay. It's going to be on Kindle Unlimited too, I see.
Yeah, that'll be a first for me, so I'm curious if that'll mean a lot of people will give it a try because they can read it for nothing out of pocket if they're already a member, you know?
Yeah, the way I understand it is that you get paid per standardized page.
Right.
So
And I'm less worried about like how much money do I make, and I'm more interested in, does that mean a lot larger readership possibly, even if the dollars don't change or even if they go down, you know?
yeah, long-term view, that's a really great way to look at it. To the audience, you know, pre-ordering a book is always a good thing for the publisher and for the writer. So, you know, we've got what, 9 days left. But you know, if you're a Kindle user, or if you're print, and this book sounds interesting to you, which it really is, you need to read it. Just go to Amazon and pre-order it. That's a very good thing. So, and it's very encouraging for the writer and the publisher, right, Mike?
It's true. Publishers like it when you give them money to make books because then they are encouraged to make more books.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yep. If you want the publisher to thrive and make more of the same thing, the best thing to do is buy the things they already made.
Yep. And if you want the writer to thrive and do more of the same thing, then the same.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Mike or any other topics before we go? It seems like the video's settled down a little bit. Ben and I will work on it this week. I apologize. I don't know what happened, but for those watching. Pete, anybody else?
I have
Rick?
a question about
Yes.
Armageddon House. You had said that it took you a while to write it, so I was curious both like how long did it take you to write, and that you also said that it changed along the way, and I was curious about that because I've heard different things with like different writers who say they maybe have an idea of where they want the story to go, but they have the characters that get so developed that they say, oh well, this character wouldn't do that. Like what with your writing process, like what made the story change along the way? And
sometimes I have a story and it's going and there's things I really like about it, but it's not working, it's not interesting, or I can't see where it will end up. So I'll change it. I don't just mean like a new draft. I mean, I'll cut giant pieces of it out, eliminate whole aspects of it, maybe change a whole setting, maybe change entire characters or all the characters, you know, maybe more of a wholesale reboot of my own story than like a new draft. And this is one of those where that happened. Like I mentioned, the first draft or the first outline and some of the sketched scenes were sort of a science fiction thing about some place that wasn't even on Earth, and a murder that happened there. So this was originally like going to be science fiction, and then I was going to reboot it into sort of our world, but a weird version, weird reality. And it was going to be a short story. And I think at the time I meant for it to be the last story to put in my last collection, which is The Human Alchemy. And The Human Alchemy the manuscript was long enough that I needed something no more than 10,000 words to not make the book too long. So I started writing on this, and it became clear that it was going to be that the revision idea was going to work, it was going to become interesting to me, but that it was going to take longer, and that it was going to end up being too long to be the final piece in the book. So I sort of scrambled through the rough draft to get my ideas out there with this new thinking of who the people were and what was happening, and then I set it aside, and then I went back and wrote another story that was actually going to be the right length to finish up The Human Alchemy so that I could send that off to WordHorde and have that become a book. And that story was, like 6,000 words. And then I went back to this and then actually worked on it for several months, probably 3 months of just nonstop going back through it and going back through it and going back through it. Some parts needed more layers, more, I don't know what you'd call it, just repetitively writing through it, through a chapter to the end, and then going back to the beginning and writing through it. Sometimes as I'm doing that, each change that I make turns me in a little bit different direction on the next run through. So it can end up that if I sometimes will just write through a scene or a chapter and do nothing but that for days. And it sounds crazy, but it ends up maybe sometimes creating the right result instead of, I don't know. It's just a weird aspect of my method of just running another layer over the top and then another layer over the top. So there's cutting and there's adding and cutting and adding to where in the end it might end up being a lot different from what the first draft was.
Well, folks, do pre-order the book. But in the meantime, if you want to read some more Mike Griffin, I mean, there are several out there. I gotta say, Mike, who did the cover to Hieroglyphs of Blood and Bone?
I don't remember the name. That's Tripped Audio, a division of Journal Stone. They use this unusual method where they do a design contest for the books. They have some kind of online, I don't know what you call it, like a cattle call thing where they get people to put in ideas, and the publisher picks the ones that he likes best, and then they do another round, and people vote on it. I don't remember the name of it, but anyway, it's this place where you end up getting somebody from out there who doesn't know you and doesn't know the publisher, but they end up submitting this idea, and it ends up being the art. So I don't remember the name of the person. In fact, I don't even believe their real name is actually attached to the book. I think it's their username that's on this website.
That's pretty interesting. Do all the people read the manuscript, or do they just get like a synopsis?
I don't think any of them read it at all. I think they read a trigger that the publisher puts in there saying, we want something in this vicinity, say futuristic science fiction with a dark edge, and then they'll write like a 1 or 2 sentence trigger of what it should contain, maybe.
Well, that is
a lot of the ideas.
That is a fantastic cover.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I can't take any credit for it, but
no, but I'm just saying, look up that one, folks, if you want to read a Mike Griffin book.
I just got something before we drift off.
Yes.
A comment and a question, please, sir.
Sure. Please go ahead, Kat.
I listened in before I joined officially, and I was chuckling a lot of times, so thank you for that. That was well needed. And yes, that goes to Langan and Griffin. I'm sorry. I was just amused listening to Mike explaining how he put layers upon layers on the story to finish it up. You know, for someone who says hasn't published music in a while, he sounds a lot like a musician when he explains that. Anyone catch that?
Yeah.
You know, ambient music where you use the layers. And the other thing about ambient music, I just love how Mike tries to put himself into this small little corner. Ambient music is one of the most difficult things to do.
I'm not catching what you're saying now, Kat. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Kat.
Yeah, you're breaking up pretty bad. I'm sorry.
It had something to do with how terrible Griffin is. That was what I got out of it.
That's where she was headed.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it going in that direction.
Certainly.
Well,
I was headed.
what I got out of it was that Mike's individual layers aren't really worth anything. And, they're just verbal.
In other words, yeah.
So you need to layer them to give it any depth.
All right, so go to Amazon, type in Michael Griffin, and go to town and pre-order Armageddon House. Thanks for coming on the show, Mike. I just have a few other things that are not pertinent to you, so you can stick around for a minute, or you can go right if that's what you'd like to do. So
I'll stick around.
I want to point out a couple things. While we're all in this lockdown, I have hundreds of free weird fiction and Lovecraftian stories at Lovecraft eZine. So maybe a lot of listeners aren't aware of that. Just go to lovecraftezine.com, click on free Lovecraftian fiction, and there's years worth of good stuff right there on the website. Anybody read the sequel to The Outsider yet? The novella If It Bleeds? Or am I the only one?
No, my copy hasn't. I ordered my copy, and I'm still waiting for it to ship. It's just
Amazon,
everything's slow.
Amazon's taken like 3 weeks to send books now. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. King and I have a relationship where he sends me everything ahead of time. No, I'm kidding. I got the Kindle edition. That's how I got it so fast.
I think you're confusing yourself with Paul Tremblay, but go on.
I'm very much confusing myself with Paul Tremblay. It's, Stephen King's other son. Yeah, If It Bleeds, that Holly Gibney, she's such a great character. You know, I like the story. With the Outsider TV series, she's a bit different, and the end was a bit confusing to me. But I think, Ben, you and I were talking about this, that they're leading into a season 2. So who knows? But there's 4 novellas in this book. So, and I see that The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is going to be a movie too. So, what else? Hellraiser is getting an HBO series. Are you guys fans of Hellraiser?
I was a fan of the first 3 films.
Yeah, I was gonna say first 2, and there's I think it's the 6th one is kind of decent with Dean Winters.
Yeah, there was a late one I liked. I just happened to watch it. I'm like, that's not bad.
Yeah, there's one. I want to say Dean Winter, the guy that's in all the is it Geico commercials, which is the one where he's like Mayhem or something like that.
Yeah,
looks beat up. He plays a detective in a later one that was actually pretty good. But yeah, after 2, I generally try not to rewatch those. I mean, 4 had some pretty. It went pretty bad.
I tried to watch it one time, long time ago. Isn't this kind of a lot of body horror stuff?
I want to say the body horror stuff was more some of the later films.
Okay.
Because Clive Barker in the original, so it's based on a novella called The Hellbound Heart, and he kind of talks about body horror, but it's not. I mean, I don't think at least it came across as the main focus to me like it did in the later films. I mean, Pete, maybe you could.
Well, I think in the I always thought of it as Gnostic torture porn.
Yeah, I guess, but I didn't at least. Maybe my memory is more of the book, but I thought it was more of this, because he talks about how it's not even just so much torture; it's the pleasure's magnified so much that it's torture. And stuff like that. It's like you said, it's more Gnostic and it's less actual body horror type stuff, at least initially. Maybe
it's getting an HBO series, so that should be.
Well, good for Clive. He can use the money. We all can.
The Lovecraft Country trailer dropped online. Any of you guys see that yet?
I did.
I haven't seen it yet, Pete. How does it look?
It's a great trailer. It's a good trailer. Really depicts a mood and a time.
Okay.
And it ends up being, I think, in a way, it's got a much creepier feel than the book. So I think it's a really good trailer. It made me look forward to the series even more.
Okay.
What about you, Pete?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I actually, to be honest with you, I've only read 1 or 2 chapters of the book. I really need to get back to that.
Not your thing, or you just got sidetracked?
I got sidetracked. And then I just had, the reading pile is deep. In fact, I just got asked to literally 5 minutes ago, got asked to blurb a book. And I've got a few days to get that done. So now I have to put everything else aside and read a book. So,
but at least you're getting paid for that.
No, I get a book.
All right, I found something on Bloody Disgusting, the website, that is. Here's the headline. Sam Raimi's, quote, 50 States of Fright is the best horror series you're not watching right now. I'm old, so I don't know what a Quibi is. Maybe Ben knows. It's short for quick bites, I guess. And a lot of this stuff is, I don't know, 9 or 10 minutes. I still can't figure out where it is, but I haven't Googled it yet.
It's a special app that you have to get for your phone, I think. I was looking into it because one of the episodes has Ming-Na Wen in it, which I love.
As who?
Ming-Na Wen is in it.
She was in Agents of Shield.
She's
She's
May.
Yeah.
Oh.
In Agents of Shield, yeah. So I guess she's in one of those episodes. So I was looking into it, but it's an app that it's kind of like TikTok. You know, the kids are all into these short blurb things.
Right.
So it's like an app that has these really short 9 to 10 minute video type things like that.
Okay, well, the listeners and viewers, you might want to Google this, get the app, or however it works. God, I sound like an old man.
So
because it's Bloody Disgusting thinks it's bloody brilliant. So
Ming-Na Wen is one of those people who's hit the trifecta, right?
Yes.
Disney character,
Disney, Marvel,
and Star Wars. So, yeah.
You say trifecta, but they're all Disney characters. So
No. They all belong to Disney now.
Well, look, when in 3 weeks, when Marvel/Disney buys Time Warner and now owns DC, it'll all be over.
Well, that's when the great ones come, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know quite how to say this, and I hope Laird doesn't get pissed at me, but
Go on.
never mind. Next topic.
Now I'm interested.
Now we're all curious.
Yeah, well, here's my message to the audience. Pick up Laird's Coleridge books and purchase them and read them, because I like, and I know a lot of people would like to see another book. So in order for that to happen, I realize things are really weird in the world right now, but
Why do you say that?
Huh?
What's weird about the world right now?
I'll tell you when you're older.
Okay.
But yeah, and so not a lot of PR can be done on books right now. But yeah, buy the Coleridge books, pick them up. John, you want to interject something in here about the Coleridge books?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that the first Coleridge novel is a kind of a traditional, like, noir kind of story with some Alaska stuff in it.
Yeah.
And then the second one, it reminds me a lot of some of Peter Straub's novels, like Coco or The Throat, where Coleridge is tracking a serial killer who doesn't really seem to be completely human. It fits my definition of a horror novel. But if you're a crime fan, a crime fiction fan, you could read it and say, oh, okay, sure. And then the third one, it tips right over into the weird. And I think that's the direction he kind of wants to take it, is just to sort of move gradually out of a kind of more conventional crime setting into something really kind of weird. Like the Charlie Parker books, the way
you just took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. So it's I think Black Mountain, I really, really dug that book. I thought that was really, really cool and melancholy and just it was interesting to me, Mike, to see that you guys were talking about Roger Zelazny. Yeah. Because increasingly, I feel like that's a through line for a lot of Laird's fiction, is that he's interested in these characters who are like Zelazny's characters. They are these often incredibly powerful, in some ways, people who are just dealing with these incredible situations, which I know, man, does not sound vague, but whether it's The Light is the Darkness or stories like the Imago sequence and Hallucigenia, or these books now, that seems to me something that, like, a common thread that's running through Laird's stories. It's also Chandler, down these mean streets walks a man who is not himself mean, but in a kind of cosmic, crazy kind of way. Well, and it's absolutely true. Buy them.
Well, yes, buy them. Laird and I, what John was just talking about, just did a Patreon podcast All you got to do is Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon. It's only $5 a month. So, but we had a great conversation about Roger Zelazny. We're both big fans of especially the Nine Princes in Amber series, and it was really great to hear his take on all that. And he said he learned from Zelazny how to paint a character. That you don't have to do everything at once. I'm badly paraphrasing what he said, but he learned a lot from Zelazny. Now I just want to point this out. I really want to support Laird. He's got a great readership, and for the talk that, geez, I wish Laird would write weird fiction and horror instead of writing noir and Coleridge. I don't think that's valid, especially based on what John Langan just said, So I mean,
don't blame this on me, Griffin. Don't or Davis. I'm sorry. But,
no, I'm just saying that if it's not that different, wouldn't you say?
Oh no, absolutely. And I would say that the same kinds of concerns that that you find in his fiction. I mean, part of what Laird brought to weird fiction, and he wasn't the first, but certainly it's one of his, I think, distinguishing characteristics, is that he gives you people who tend to be pretty competent in their lives before whatever weirdness happens. And so it's not like, look, if something weird, it doesn't take something, I would be very easy to kill in a weird fiction story, right? Like I wouldn't make it past like maybe one page, maybe 2 pages, right? And the monster would just get me. It would just, I'm absolutely the guy who, when there's a noise outside, I'm like, what's that? Let me go see. So Laird's characters don't do that, right? Laird's characters are like, well, maybe I'm going to go see, but I'm going to take my gun and my sword and all this kind of stuff. And then they still struggle against it. So I think that, Laird presents you like with these competent people who are facing a universe that is just malign and overwhelming. Yeah. And I think that's part of why his stuff is so effective. And the Coleridge novels, Coleridge is absolutely that kind of character. This guy who is, a sort of top level hitman who is not usually sent out to do random hits or whatever. He's the guy who doesn't get caught. He's right. The guy that he's not a blunt instrument so much as he's the scalpel that you use when you're like, I really need something done and I need it done really well. And then he runs afoul of the mob and gets sent from Alaska to upstate New York. And then he keeps running into these things that even for him are just a lot. So yeah, they're good stuff.
And I would also say this points to the ridiculousness of trying to confine something to a genre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why bother categorize it? Can't I just read it and enjoy it?
No, you can't, Matt Carpenter. You can't.
Okay, well, I categorize yours as farce. So,
well,
that's about right.
I've been for years such a huge fan of John Connolly's Charlie Parker books. And it probably goes without saying that you need to read them in order. But when you start him, he's this detective, and then just barely there's this hint of the paranormal in, subsequent books. And it gets more and more prominent. And I think it's all the more interesting for that. And it really, really does, like you said, John, remind me of what Laird is doing with the Coleridge novels. So anyway, yeah, I want to read more of them. I think everybody should read more of them. So please buy those Coleridge novels. So, yeah. Anything else, guys?
Can I do some shameless promotion?
Please do.
Okay. So I have 2 stories that are just about to appear. One in Japan in Nightland Quarterly. It's a reprint of my my tribute to Ramsey Campbell that we did a couple of years back.
I didn't know you knew Japanese. That's a dad joke. Never mind. Go ahead.
And the second one is coming out this month in Vestarian. It's called The Zanies of the Unforgotten, and it's a tribute to Willem Hopflog Pugmire.
Oh yeah.
And
Pete, is the Ramsey Campbell tribute the one you did for Necronomicon?
yes,
Right there?
yes,
Herb story.
yeah. And Matt liked that one as well.
Wait, Pete, you know Japanese?
So I did spend like a summer in Japan, and I at one point was quite proficient in
On
Japanese.
the run from the Yakuza. Go on, tell us
Yes,
the
of
story.
course, absolutely. But that was a long time ago, and it's really hard to keep that language in your head. So
Yeah, you stole a car there, if I remember correctly.
no, I did not. No. I woke up in a taxi going the wrong way down the road, which freaked me out after spending 22 hours on a plane. And then the guy took a right onto the train tracks to avoid traffic.
This sounds
But,
like
yeah.
you were a character in the game, with Michael Douglas.
No. Oh yeah, that yes.
Or an
Michael-
Laird Barron story.
a Laird
that's
Barron
true.
story. And then the other thing I'm going to say is, yes, I'm okay. People have been sending me text messages and personal messages about if my dream journal is like indicative of me having some psychological problems. No.
The answer is yes.
Well, yes, but no.
No more than anything else.
Exactly. This is pretty standard, pretty normal. I am having some. The quarantine dreams are pretty intense right now, and I'm purging them by writing them down for everybody. So there.
All right, well, we'll close out, but next...
Wait. Final mention of the prize?
Yeah, and I want to say something else after you do. Go ahead.
Okay, so remember, if you want to win the prize, which is this beautiful copy of Some Notes on a Non-Entity by Sam Gafford and Jason Eckhart, all you have to do is send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com, put entity in the title, or non-entity, or something, in the subject heading, and you will be entered in the drawing, and we'll pick a winner in a couple of weeks.
John, was it next week? Our guest is Danielle Trusoni. John, was it you that was telling me that you read this and really liked it, or am I thinking of someone else?
No, I did. Yeah, it's
The
really
Ancestor.
good. Yeah, it's absolutely worth a read. As are her earlier. She's a what would you call it? A bivalve. 2 novel set about. It's called Angelology, which is not my favorite title, but those books are also really, really good.
Well, let me put it this way. On the back of the book, we've got a blurb from Paul Tremblay, Victor LaValle, and several others. So yeah, pick this up. I don't know if it's out yet or not. I need to look at it.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure that it is. Yeah, it's absolutely worth a read.
Okay, again, it's called The Ancestor. She's our guest next week, and it's Danielle Trusoni. Yeah, hopefully I'm saying that right. TRU.
That's my understanding.
Okay, TRUSSONI. So, John, really glad you made it. Mike Griffin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
and
guys.
talking about your book with us. Again, Armageddon House, go ahead and pre-order it and get Mike's other books too. Thanks so much to all my patrons. I won't go into it, but all of you guys were extremely kind to me in the last 24 hours. So thank you so much. And I think that's it. And we will see everybody next week.